And now from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Opén Connection with your host, Sarah Komadina. Brought to you by Rio Tinto Alcan.
Welcome to Opén Connection. I'm Sarah Komadina. Today we are talking about the seriousness of violence against women in a series. You'll be finding lots of episodes about violence against women on Opén Connection for the next little bit. Joining me today is Ending Violence Association, or also known as EVA, Morgen Baldwin. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So it's lovely to have you here, and this is a huge, serious topic. There are many different organizations that touch on domestic violence and violence against women, and EVA is just part of that. So do you mind telling me just a brief explanation of the role of the Ending Violence Association?
Sure. We're a provincial nonprofit that works on behalf of the local anti-violence programs, so the Stopping the Violence counseling and outreach workers, as well as community-based victim assistance programs across the province. And we provide supports to those programs based on what they're telling us they need, whether that's training or other types of supports, as well as try to raise the issues that we're hearing from local programs with government and other stakeholders.
And today we're focusing on domestic violence and violence against women. So talking about domestic violence in BC, what does that actually look like?
It's a really terrible situation when you look into it, and this year we've seen what looks like a really big increase in domestic violence homicides, particularly the killing of women, as well as some of the homicides have been. One in particular was a new boyfriend who was killed by his partner's ex-spouse. And then a number of men who have killed themselves after killing or attempting to kill their partners and families. So, and that we know is kind of the tip of the iceberg. It's a terrible reality on its own, but it represents a small percentage of what's going on with a lot of people in abusive relationships and dealing with all kinds of violence.
Why is this happening?
There's a lot of theories about that, but I think one of the things that we've seen is a lack of attention on how people can stop being abusive in their relationships and a lack of programs in that area. So a lot of people who are abusive in their relationships don't want to be, so we need more focus in that way, and I think a lot of victim blaming, a lot of people focusing on why does she stay, why did she choose that person, what's she doing what's her part in it, kind of it takes two to tango myths that are completely false, but it's really disheartening to be in an abusive relationship and to be somebody who's abusive and to hear kind of a lack of support for changing your behavior, and certainly for people who are victims to be blamed for that abuse is really, really disheartening and is a big part of the problem.
Who's most at risk to be in a situation like this?
It does cross all socioeconomic and races, and it's quite widespread. We just saw in our stats for who was killed in BC this year that it ranged between a 19-year-old and an 80-year-old, so quite a broad range of ages. The people who are most at risk are people who are isolated, which is also a key part of an abusive relationship, keeping your family isolated.
Now, a question I have is, how does a woman maybe find herself in this situation, and a man for that matter, how does this happen in the first place?
Well, I think that what happens is most often there's not a lot of warning signs early on. So most often when people are abusive, they're not abusive at the beginning of the relationship. There's a lot of women who tell stories about that the abuse didn't start until they moved in together, or until they got married, or until there was some kind of step in the relationship when it became clear that their partner was abusive. We do see a lot of romanticizing as well of stalking. What's actually stalking or criminal harassment is often seen as really romantic, and so that can be another difficult thing to sort out when somebody just wants to spend every moment with you. Is that romantic, or is that a sign that they might be somebody who is going to be controlling in the relationship? It's a difficult thing to see coming.
Yeah, how would you be able to tell the difference?
Yeah, yeah. I think that a lot of people look back and blame themselves. Victims of domestic violence most often look back and blame themselves and say, I should have seen it coming. I should have known what the signs were, and there are things to look out for, more about how you're feeling in that relationship. And so, but at the same time, hindsight is 20/20, and sometimes a lot clearer than it was at the time. So I think that, you know, it's important for people just to be aware of what abuse is, to have a broader definition than physical violence. It doesn't often start with physical violence. It starts with that kind of thing, emotional abuse and isolation and financial abuse, spiritual abuse, all kinds of other types of abuse that if you're kind of waiting for it to be physical violence for it to be defined as domestic violence, a lot of those other types of abuse can be missed.
Thank you, and stay with us because after the break we're going to have more with the EVA's Ending Violence Association, Morgen Baldwin, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about the services that EVA has to offer.
Opén Connection will be right back after these messages.